Thanks to the support of my lovely patrons over on Patreon, I was able to get my hands on this set of Golden Open Acrylics, which is a type of slow-drying acrylic paint. I got it in the landscape set, but I very much regret that, and honestly, to give you the TLDR of my review, I have never been more disappointed with a set of professional artist-grade paints, actually. And I was really looking forward to these paints. Like, I really wanted to enjoy them. I want to take a little bit of some time today in this video to talk about my first impressions, why I was really frustrated with these paints, and who I think they could actually work well for, if anyone. But first things first, let's talk about the colors in this set. I got the landscape set, which includes cadmium yellow primrose, yellow ochre, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson hue, ultramarine blue, manganese blue hue, sap green hue, and titanium white. The titanium white comes in a 2 fluid ounce tube, and all of the rest of the colors come in 3/4 ounce tubes, which is pretty standard. You're normally going to get smaller tubes when you buy them in a set like this because they're very affordable, but the color selection I was actually very surprised by as I was swatching them and testing out the mixes in these first paintings. So the first thing that surprised me was the fact that there was no brown included in this set. I would think and fully expect there to be a burnt sienna or burnt umber included in this set, as it is very traditional for landscape sets of paints to include some kind of brown. And the alizarin crimson and the sap green hue, which are the 2 darker colors in this set that I would normally combine together to make a neutral, don't have enough tinting strength, as they're both fairly transparent pigments, to really make a nice brown. And if you include the ultramarine blue, which is also a very surprising combination in here, then you can't make a good brown color, and I found that very frustrating. In that same line of thought, the transparent pigments in this set are like just a terrible inclusion. I have no idea who picked the pigments in this set, but like I want to grab them by the shoulders and just shake them. Like, why would you choose these colors? It doesn't make sense to me. And it sounded good on paper because I had no idea that the alizarin crimson and the sap green hue were going to be so transparent. There are versions of alizarin crimson and sap green that are much more opaque, that are much more suitable to a landscape kind of use. But when you mix these paints together, you are unable to make a nice brown, and the paints themselves are transparent, like in and of themselves, which I also found very frustrating. And when you combine the transparent nature of the paint with the transparent pigments, it's a disaster. I would normally expect there to be a phthalo green included in this set, or maybe like an olive green, some like sort of nicer opaque green color that you can actually use for landscapes. But as it is, I was perpetually surprised and disappointed. I don't mean for this review to be super negative. I was really looking forward to these paints, and so as soon as I started swatching them and trying to mix with them and paint with them, and I began to have this dawning realization that these paints weren't going to work like any normal acrylic. They weren't going to work like acrylic gouache. They weren't going to work like fluid acrylics. They weren't going to be even close to oils. They're just their own entity that I had no reference point for how to actually take advantage of. I started out this initial sort of landscape house sketch in my smaller Strathmore watercolor sketchbook. I went out of the gate acknowledging that these paints were transparent. So I thought to myself, okay, like let's build up some nice transparent layers, like let's build up the opacity over time, similar to how I would paint wet and wet with oils, for example, starting with an underpainting and then slowly building up opacity, adding less and less water or less and less medium. But the thing is, these paints just never get to the opacity that you want them to be. So even when I used these paints straight out of the tube, no water included, I still wasn't able to get like a fully opaque layer. When I see acrylic painters like Jess Franks or Nisa Asakawa or the Obanoth on Instagram, for example, paint with acrylics, they're able to get very nice opaque flat colors right out of the gate. And even when you add a little bit of water, you increase the flow of the paints, but you don't really take this much of a hit in their opacity like you do with these Golden Open acrylics. So I was not able to get nice, clean, flat layers no matter what I did with these paints, which I found very frustrating. It was very much unlike my experiences with acrylic gouache, for example, which I use later in this process, just because I wanted some kind of comparison. I thought I was going crazy, you guys. Like, I was painting with these paints and I was like, oh my god, like, am I having a stroke? Like, do I know actually how to make art? It made me doubt everything about myself and my skills, and it really emphasizes the importance of materials and how finding materials that work well with your style of painting is so important. Acrylic gouache, for example, has a very nice flow to it, and I use it later on in this process to at least have some kind of opaque layer right out of the gate. I would not have expected Golden to stumble this much with these paints. I've tried Golden fluid acrylics before, and I've loved Golden's stuff in the past, and I've had such a great experience with their company so far, and the fact that they just made this horrible set of paints that I've been just really struggling with. And I don't think it's me, because I've tried lots of different techniques with these paints. I went in with, as I said before, trying to build up those opaque layers. I tried using no water, I tried using lots of water. I tried mixing it with acrylic gouache, which I feel like shouldn't be necessary. I tried their open thinner, which did not reduce brush drag. Brush drag, by the way, is when you feel like you don't have enough paint in your brush. So your brush starts off very strong, a very nice straight line, but then it gets very kind of feathery. And I found no way to reduce that kind of featheriness other than just using an obscene amount of paint, which I feel like should not be necessary. Sometimes when you thin oil paints down too much, they kind of disappear. And that's how I felt with these paints when I used any amount of water or the open thinner included in the set. And I don't mean to complain. I really, really don't. I really wanted to love these paints, but it just like, it is what it is. If I couldn't find a way to work with them, I couldn't find a way to work with them. And yeah, I mean, I really wanted it to be user error, and I really tried lots of different techniques trying to come up with some kind of way to make these paints work. And it's the day after I made these two paintings, so I could totally like try and go back and salvage these pieces, but I'm just, for something that's clearly meant for plein air painting, I was very surprised that these paints seemed to struggle against me when I tried to paint something in one sitting. Blending was really difficult, for example. Blending with acrylic gouache is hard enough as it is, but that felt like a cakewalk, like a walk in the park compared to trying to blend with these acrylics. And I think going forward, I might actually just have to use them in conjunction with acrylic gouache. I did find that they worked kind of well together, that acrylic gouache seemed to minimize the very significant drawbacks of these paints. And so if I use them again, I'll probably have to use them with acrylic gouache, just because there was no dark color in this set. The alizarin crimson and the sap green hue, you're just unable to make a really nice dark neutral color with them, like I talked about before. And the titanium white in this set is great. It's very opaque, unlike all of the rest of the colors. And I don't understand why Golden would make this set of landscape paints so ill-suited to landscapes. Like, I don't get it. Did I pick the wrong colors here? Am I using them incorrectly? If any of you guys have these paints, like, please let me know. But yeah, this is supposed to be a first impressions review, and so this is my first impression, which is definitely not positive. So as it is right now, I really cannot recommend these paints. I'm really hoping that I can find some way to use them going forward. Like, maybe I can do something with these that'll make them worth the money that I invested, but right now it's just not worth it. But anyway, if you want to see my further experiments with these paints or enjoy lots of bonus videos or live stream replays, please consider pledging to my Patreon. We are so close to hitting $100 a month, which has been my goal for a long time, and we're also really close to hitting 10k. So if you're not subscribed and you've watched this much of the video, please do so already. I don't normally complain like this in my videos, but this is my first like really kind of review style format, and I'm very apologetic that we didn't start off strong, because I really did want to enjoy these paints. And yeah, that's all I have for this video, actually. Unfortunately, I'll keep working with these paints, I'll keep trying them, I'll let you know how it goes, but yeah, so far not so good. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day though, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.